So a key term to subtraction is to understand what difference means. Now the difference is the answer to a subtraction question. It is just like sum. Sum is the answer to a addition question, whereas now we're talking about the difference between two numbers, if we really think about the definition of difference. So right over here, we're going to be talking about basic subtraction here. So here's the subtraction without regrouping. Right here we have 7,562 minus 4,310. Now what we're doing is we're trying to find the number in between 7,562 and 4,310. That is basically the difference. So the difference, once we subtract all this, when we do subtraction, like in addition, we want to break down everything into single digits. We don't want to do everything at once because then everything will be very confusing. So, breaking it down, we always start from the right to the left, working with our ones column in the place value chart. So, right over here, we'll start with 2 minus 0. Since we're not taking anything away from 2, we know that the answer should be 2 right away. So, we have our 2 right there. Now, we go into the tens column and we have a 6 and a 1. What we're actually doing is we're subtracting 60 minus 10. But that's just a technicality. We only really want to focus on 6 minus 1. So we're going to be taking away 1 out of 6. And if we take 1 away from 6, we are left with 5. Then we move on to the next column. And then we're now in the hundreds column. So now we have a 5, and we're taking away 3 from that 5. And what we'll be left with is 2. And finally, we have 7, which represents thousands. So it's 7,000, and we're really doing 7,000 minus 4,000. But again, since all the rest of it has been already subtracted, all we have to deal with are these single digit numbers. So 7 minus 4, we take away 4 from 7, and we're left with 3. Okay, so very basic subtraction. Now what's great about subtraction is you can actually check to see if you're right. Many of our students are very good at adding together. They have a little bit of trouble when they're subtracting. So if they take a little bit of time just to reverse everything and make it an addition, they'll be able to get the correct answer. So how do we do this? We're going to do everything in reverse order. So we're going to take the difference, which is 3,252. And we're going to add that to 4,310. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking these two numbers, and we're going to be adding them, and then we're going to make them equals this number right over there. Okay? So we just write it in reverse order. We get 3,252, and then we're going to add it together to 4,310. So our answer should be the top part of the equation. Are we going to be right? Well, if we do the addition, we have 2 plus 0 is 2, 5 plus 1, 6, 2 plus 3 is 5, and 3 plus 4 is 7. So if we look at these two answers right over here, moving it up to right over here, we'll see that our subtraction is correct. So again, it's very, very great that we can actually check to see if our answer is right. If our difference is incorrect, then we know that we've made a mistake if we've checked it already. Okay? Now that was a very basic subtraction right there. The next part is called regrouping, right over here. Now when regrouping actually happens, it's when you have our top number here. So for this example, we have 5,371. And then we have the subtraction of 1,982. Alright, so what we can see here is that 1 on the top, 7, and 3, all three of those numbers are actually smaller than the number below. So going through this whole entire subtraction, we're going to have to do something called regrouping. Now again, we're going to start at the first column, which is the ones column. Now just like what we did before, we want to subtract the top number by the bottom number. However, we have a little problem here. The 1 is actually smaller than the 2. We can't actually take that away. So what are we going to do? We're going to have to do something called regrouping. what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to borrow from the tens column. We're going to need to take a whole entire 10 from the tens column right here, from the 7. Alright, so what are we going to do? If we need to borrow 10, because if we need to borrow 10, we could actually do, finally, 11 minus 2, or 10 minus 2, because we have a greater number, but we can't do 1 minus 2. So what we do in our head is we need to come up with an equation up here that will allow us to do subtraction. So how do we do that? We need to make this 1 greater than 10. So we take it from the tens column. So we're going to slash that out, and this number is going to become a 6 because we've now done really 70 minus 10, and we've placed a 10 into the 1 column somehow. And then our 1 goes right over here, and now we have 11. So what we're doing over here is we're doing 11 minus 2. We're simply regrouping everything so that we can make this subtraction work. Okay, and 11 minus 2 is 9, because now we could take away 2 from 11. So 2 from 11, and we have 9 over here. Okay, now since we've already used up one of the 10s from the 10 column, we are now only left with 6 of them. The 7th is gone. We've used that so that we can make the first subtraction. Now we're dealt with a 6 over here. And once again, we have the bottom number, which is greater than the top. So we cannot do 6 minus 8. So we're going to have to regroup again. So we're going to be borrowing from the hundreds column. So we need to take one of those, cross that out from the hundreds column. We need to take that away. So if we take one of those away, we're left with 2. And if we put it over here, we now have 16. So 6 plus 10 is 16. Now we could do our subtraction once again. 16 minus 8 is 8. Okay? And once again over here, our number's far greater on the bottom than the top. So we cannot do 2 minus 9. We're going to have to regroup once again. And as you guessed, we're going to be taking it from the thousands column. We're going to take one away, put it right next to here. So now we're dealt with 12 minus 9. And we could finally subtract that. We have 3. And finally, 4 minus 1. We don't need to regroup anything because the top number is greater than the bottom. And we're left with 3. And we're left with a difference of 3,389. Now, can we check this? We could always check it. How do we do that? Just like as we did before. We do the reverse. 3,389. And then we add the number above that, which is 1,982. And we're going to be trying to get the top. 9 plus 2 is 11. Then we have 1 plus 8 is 9 plus 8 is 17. Then we have 1 plus 3 plus 9 is 13. Then we add the top there, and we have 1 plus 3 is 4 plus 1 is 5. And we can see that 5,371 adds up to 5,371 on the original question. Therefore, we're correct. So that is the regrouping method. What we're actually doing there is we're taking one of the tens or the hundreds or another number from another place value chart, and we're placing it into that subtraction to make everything all much easier. Now, one of the problems that we also found was regrouping with zeros. So right here we have the number 4,000 minus 2,648. Now this becomes much more difficult. When we're doing this number, we cannot borrow in the traditional way as the other regrouping method suggests. So right here we have to deal once again with the right. We're always working from right to left. So here we have 0 minus 8. Again, you cannot take 8 away from nothing because there's nothing there. So we're going to have to regroup. Now traditionally we would regroup from the tens column, but that's not possible because there's 0 there too. So we're going to have to go to the next one. And we cannot take from the hundreds column. The only way that we could take away or to regroup is from this thousands column. So we're going to have to take 1,000 and regroup it all the way back down to the ones column. Alright, so we're going to have to take 1,000. Now how does this thing actually move? Well, we're going to regroup it first down to the hundreds. Okay, so we're going to have 3 up here. Now it's been regrouped now down to the hundreds. So we borrowed 1,000 and it's into the hundreds column. So now there is a 10 over here. Okay, but we still need to make it down over here. So now that we have 10 in the hundreds column, now the tens column can borrow from the hundreds column. So what's going to happen? Now that there's 10, we can now borrow. We could slash out this 10. It is now 9 because 10 minus 9, or 10 minus 1 is 9. And now the 10 is over in the tens column since we borrowed it from the hundreds. So now we have 10, but again, we still need to move one more column over to the 1. So now that there's 10 finally in the tens column, just like what we did in the previous question, we can now finally take 1 away from the tens column, and that will go down to 9 once again, and now we could do our subtraction as 10 minus 8. So now we have 10 minus 8, and that is 2. And now all we have are simple questions going down with each of them. 9 minus 4 is 5. 9 minus 6 is 3. And 3 minus 2 is 1. Okay, so you can see how it kind of gets a little difficult when we're borrowing with all these zeros in front of it. We're borrowing from a greater distance. So we're moving all the way from the thousands. And you can see how they move from column to column and why each of the middle numbers will always be 9. Until you finally get to the last one, until you get a 10. Now, just like anything else, we could always check to see if this is correct. So we're going to reverse it down to 1,352. And we're going to add 2,648. Add it together. 2 plus 8 is 10. 1 plus 5 is 6 plus 4 is 10. 1 plus 3 plus 6 again is 10. 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 4. And as you can see, our two answers here are lined up at 4,000. So we're correct once again. And that's a great thing about subtractions. We could always check to see if we are correct by simply reversing it into addition. Okay. So now we're moving along to decimals. Now, like anything else, will decimals be anything different than the previous question? Absolutely not. It is the same thing. All we've done is add 2 places on the place value chart. It just happens to be these decimals over here. So decimals, once again, are numbers in between whole numbers. So as long as your decimals are lined up, you should be able to do the subtraction once again. So this looks like a regrouping question. We have 13.57 minus 9.49. So once again, we're going to start with the 7 minus 9. We need to regroup. We're going to cross out that 5. We're left with 4, and one of the 10s is moved over to the 1 column. And we have 17 minus 9, which is 8. We have 4 minus 4. We don't need to regroup. We could simply subtract that. We have 0. We must bring down our decimal, always, just like how we did with addition. And finally, we have 3 minus 9. Now this question is already looking like 13 minus 9, so you don't really need to regroup. It's already right there. And we have 4. And our answer is 4.08. With decimals, can we check this to see if we're right? Absolutely. We just do the exact opposite once again. 4.08 plus 9.49. Add it together and we'll get the answer. So 8 plus 9 is 17. 1 plus 4 is 5. We move the decimal down, always in the same place. 9 plus 4 is 13. So once again, we're lined up 13.57 and 13.57. We have a correct answer. And it goes the same for regrouping with zeros with decimals. Same thing. Don't be afraid of this decimal. It's just a little dot right there. Everything's the same. So once again, we'll regroup. We start with the zeros. We're going to borrow all the way from the 6. So we're going to have to cross off that 6, and we have 5 now. It moves along from the 10s to the hundreds, to the hundreds to the 10s to the 1s. So we know that this should be now 9. This one also 9 if we're moving quickly. And now we could have 10 minus 4. 10 minus 4 is 6. 9 minus 0 is 9. We have our decimal, 9 minus 2, 7 once again. And 5 minus 3 is 2. So it's the exact same process. There's